If you would like to fight other players in Dark Souls 2, there are some important things you need to know about the mechanics of this game, which will improve your mobility, your ability to manipulate opponents, build your defensive strategy, and raise your personal skill ceiling dramatically. This video is intended for those of you who wish to improve with advanced techniques. A separate video for beginners will come at a later time, covering the basics that you must master. Many times in PvP, I have encountered other players who seem to love this game, just as I do, that play very often. Even today in 2020. This game came out in 2014, so these players that are playing right now, they really have to love the game in order to keep going. Most of these people, sadly, don't know most of the things I'm going to share with you now. Well, either that, or they just don't want to put the effort into practicing these tricks and fighting concepts. As most of these players are Russian, they speak or read quite little English, and they must rely on their own community to build each other up. But that's where I kind of come in. If you understand English, then this video can help you pretty much substantially. So, let's go at number 1. Counter damage. It is important for the rest of the video that this is explained thoroughly. Attack animations in Dark Souls 2 have 3 stages: wind up or pre-attack, attack, and recovery or post-attack. Those are the 3 stages. The wind-up of every attack is the beginning of the period in which you are vulnerable to counter damage. The attack stage of all attacks is the point in which you swing or thrust your weapon and stamina is consumed, and after it is finished, you are no longer vulnerable to counter damage. You are then in the recovery stage. Counter is extra damage inflicted onto you based on any weapon's specific counter damage modifier, seen in the stat screen of every weapon in the game is between 100 and 160. So, for example, if a weapon has 100 counter and you attack while the other person is vulnerable, it's going to deal 100% of the weapon's damage. Anything above that, if it's 120, you're going to deal 120% of the damage. So it's extra damage inflicted based on the opponent's current position in the attack stage. Each weapon has a common counter damage modifier among other weapons in the same class. For instance, a thrusting sword like the rapier has a counter of 140, which we will call baseline counter modifier from here on. Some thrusting swords have sub-baseline counter modifiers, that is to say their counter modifier falls below the baseline. The Astok, Spider Silk, and Scorpion Stinger are sub-baseline counter weapons with values of 120, 110, and 100 respectively. Similarly, certain weapons will exceed the baseline counter modifier. We will call these exceptional counter weapons. In terms of straight swords, 110 is the baseline counter modifier, and several weapons in this class fall either below or above that. The short sword, for example, is an exceptional counter weapon with a counter of 120. The Drakekeeper sword has 100, making it a sub-baseline counter weapon. These examples exist throughout almost every weapon class. So hopefully you understand this concept thoroughly by now. You should be using exceptional counter weapons in a manner that allows you to take advantage of the counter damage during an opponent's wind-up and attack animations, rather than exploiting their opening during recovery or post-attack. With the inclusion of lag and latency that is in almost every fight, hitting your opponent while they are in the middle of the attack animation may count towards counter damage, just the way the game kind of works in a laggy, latency prone environment. So you can pretty much trade blows and it will deal the counter damage to them, but at the same time you will be having counter damage inflicted onto you. So, of course, scoring blows on your opponent at any opportunity is the most important thing, and sometimes you will be faced with somebody who wields a much more powerful weapon that will simply deal more damage to you than you would deal to them per strike, making a trade of blows not work in your favor. So you should pick your engagements carefully and tune your weapon choice accordingly. Number 2, attack cancels. A very important trick you must learn to exploit is the ability to cancel attack animations while still in the pre-attack stage. This is done simply by pressing B or circle if on PlayStation or Xbox controller pads, or spacebar if using default keyboard controls, at just the right moment before the animation is forced to continue playing out. The timing varies depending on the weapon and attack chosen, with a very small number of attack animations having almost or absolutely no timing window to cancel them. For example, a strong attack on a flamberge, Drangleic sword, key to the embedded, etc., which looks like a Zwerkow in modern HEMA practice, lock you into the attack animation immediately after the animation begins. In order to effectively demonstrate and practice this technique of attack canceling, equip a long sword or black steel katana, initiate the strong attack, and try to roll or backstep before the attack stage of the animation plays. To really master each attack and each weapon, you want to see where the last possible moment to attack cancel is, and try to reliably perform the attack cancel before that moment. Most attacks in the game can be cancelled, and to be certain that an attack cannot be cancelled, try using an attack of your choice, be it a running, rolling, strong, or light standing attack, while pressing the input to roll forward at the exact same time, and progressively press the attack and roll buttons less and less in sync, as you see on the screen now. Another note, while backsteps work for attack canceling as well, rolling seems to be more reliable and consistent. This technique is the foundation for the more advanced techniques to come in this video. Number 3. Quick rolls. As you probably know, having less gear equipped on your character makes you lighter, and therefore you may roll farther distance each time. At above 70% of your maximum equip load, you will become encumbered by your gear and start fat rolling. There's no advantage to this, so at all times you will want to have a normal roll. Probably didn't know is that you can increase the speed at which you may roll in succession. That is to say, you may roll and then roll again with less delay between the two movements. This is done by employing the attack cancel technique on a rolling attack at the earliest possible moment, which does two things. First, it interrupts the recovery stage of the roll animation with an attack animation that will begin before the end of the recovery stage. Second, it will cancel that attack animation faster than if you were to simply wait for the entirety of the roll animation. This trick allows you to roll out of the way of a variety of attack spams that you will likely face in PvP, such as a long sword's strong attack and strong attack follow-up. That's pressing strong attack twice. It will also help you entirely avoid some spells and pyromancies, such as Fire Whip, Outcry, Wrath of the Gods, Scraps of Life, so on and so forth. In essence, this moves your invincibility frame windows of the two rolls closer together, and while you're not entirely immune to using this technique, it is extremely difficult for opponents to punish your rolls without very precise timing and positioning. Number 4. Feints. Essentially just performed by attack canceling, feinting is the act of initiating the movements for an attack with the purpose of drawing reaction from your opponent to counter the perceived motion, and at the last moment performing a different action to counter your opponent's attempted counter maneuver. This technique is present in almost all combat sports today and can be employed in this game to the same effect. While in some cases you will want to attack cancel in order to roll more quickly, or because you know your attack will miss and leave you vulnerable, there are instances where you will want to trick your opponent into rolling or throwing some attack, which will put you in an ideal position to punish them. Some examples include winding up a longsword light attack, backstepping, and performing a backstep attack to close the distance and punish your opponent's attempted counterattack. Maybe the opponent frequently tries to roll behind you when you attempt to attack. You can feint in order to backstep attack with a weapon in your offhand such as a greatsword or curved sword, which will turn you towards them. Maybe the opponent frequently rolls directly away from you in response. You can feint and roll towards them to punish with a rolling attack. Chain some of these things together for the ultimate feint, feint, punish combos. The final technique I will show you will expand this concept and open the door for even greater fighting dynamic. Number 5. Recovery cancels. This is an extremely important technique to understand and ultimately master along with everything else explained in the video so far. Now, as I mentioned in number 3, you are canceling the last stage of a roll animation with an attack, then canceling that attack immediately into another roll. Think about the post-attack stage in attack animations. This too can be cancelled, and that is performed with a follow-up attack that is then attack cancelled at the earliest possible. So to further explain, a large variety of attacks in this game, chained together in 2 attack sequences. Pressing light or strong attack twice in succession is the most obvious instance of this. In most cases, the second attack in these 2 attack sequences begin immediately after the attack stage of the first attack animation. That, or they will cancel the recovery stage of the attack animation of the attack before it. If you started practicing the attack cancels already, then it should be relatively easy to understand how this works, although the timing in your button or key presses is slightly different. Since controller and keyboard inputs have different delay, input latency, it is better for you to discover a timing that works for you. The primary advantage you gain in this technique is the ability to evade punishing attacks from your opponent, although in doing so you may find yourself in a better position to attack or surprise them, but you may also find yourself in a worse position if you do not use this carefully. I know you will have a greater chance of beating an opponent who does not understand this trick if you begin practicing and employing it in your fights. Well, that should cover the advanced tactics I've described here. If after watching this you start seeing player versus player content as more dynamic and interesting, then I urge you to give it a shot with some of these tricks and techniques. I've always hated the negativity Dark Souls 2 has received from Souls fans, as it shows me how little it is understood from a technical standpoint. Obviously this game has glaring flaws, and based on its developmental history, in which it didn't even start out as a Souls game, it was forced into the role quite late in development. I would agree that it's the weakest installment in the franchise. However, the aspect of fighting is strongest in this game out of all of the Souls games, simply because your options in movement and technical fighting strategies are leagues above the other Soulsborne games. They just don't do you that much good fighting in PvE. That's, single player stuff. Back to the PvP. The tempo of every fight, that is to say the pace of the fight, is always decided by the more aggressive and advanced player. Very rarely are character stats the sole dictator of outcomes. When fighting in other Soulsborne games, it will become immediately obvious that specific builds have specific strengths and weaknesses, and almost always the winning strategy with those builds will be accompanied by a stale-paced rock-paper-scissors exchange, with the absolute best builds limited to those that are mathematically safe in that regard. The tempo of fights in other games can only be stretched so far, hard-capped based on your chosen build. What Dark Souls 2 does to differentiate itself is that those approaches which are popular in the other Souls games, they have significant shortcomings in this game, due to the various ways a player can move or attack, and evade, and counter pretty much any attack. It is not a game of poise tanking, damage stacking, ranging, or respect to a soul level meta. Instead, it is a combination of all those things with the unique aspects of player movement and animation manipulation in this game. There are more things I will explain, so look for the intermediate and beginner videos in the future. Admittedly, I should have started this video series in the opposite order, but it is what it is. Thanks for watching, now go practice.